What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Big Dave. Welcome back to another episode of Culture Dads, Age, Sword, and Cassette. What we're going to talk about today is a film that a lot of you guys out there grew up loving. A lot of people out there absolutely just adore this. This is one of the iconic movies of the 80s, and honestly, of the big, awesome box office, zany, just badass movie. If we have a top five of just like, you don't even have any criteria. You just say, what are the five most badass movies of all time, right? You ask somebody. Obviously, they're going to say something like Rambo. Like Rambo First Blood's going to be on there. You got to have something like Total Recall. It's got to be on there, maybe. At least one Arnold movie. Wait, did I just name two Arnold? Wait, what was the first one I said?
Rambo.
Okay, so Stallone. No. You have Commando, Terminator 2. Like, so you got to
have a Clint Eastwood movie on there at some point too.
Yeah.
We could go through all this. I mean, we could.
Let's do a whole show. Let's do like 5 or 10 most badass. So anyway, I'm sorry, Mike. I'm gonna give it over to you. I'm just excited. I'm excited about this. So one of the movies that just about anybody, like, even if you don't put it on your list, if somebody has it on their list, you're gonna be like, okay, yeah, that deserves to be on the list, right? Is RoboCop, right? I love RoboCop. You guys out there, I know you love RoboCop. Mike has never seen it. Mike never saw it. And I was like,
yep,
this has to change right now. So I was like, Mike, you watch RoboCop, and we're going to do a whole show about it. We have to do. We had other ideas, like some big brain ideas and stuff like that. And he's like, oh, I've never seen RoboCop. I was like, okay, fuck everything else. Stop. We got to do an episode. You have to watch RoboCop. This is against the rules. So before I start yakking, Mike, first impressions, the first RoboCop.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll get to that in just a second, but just a little bit of Culture Dad's lore for the listeners here. When Dave first approached me about this podcast, I told him, look, I don't know if I'm the right guy because I haven't seen most of like the classic movies that like everybody has seen a million times and, you know, discussed with their friends for hours and hours and hours. A lot of shit I haven't seen. I'm like just like completely a Philistine when it comes to movies, especially. I know a lot of stuff about music, not much about movies or TV and that kind of thing. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm the guy for this. Thankfully, I turned around and we eventually did it or whatever. But this is one of the reasons is that I've never seen RoboCop until just the other day, actually. But it's one of those movies that looms large in like your psyche. Anybody who was, let's just say, born, I don't know, sometime in the 80s at least, and maybe after. You know what the trailer looks like. You know what the movie poster looks like. You know what the character looks like. And you even know like what the font looks like from and like
the theme song,
movie title. Yeah, da 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 da. It's just fucking badass or whatever, right? Yeah, it's a real cultural touchstone, and yet somehow I missed it. Although that's not entirely true, and we'll get to that. But yes, so I mean, this is, and it was made in 1987, which is like, for my money, this is when the 80s really gets good in a lot of ways. You know what I mean? It's not to like disparage anything that came before or whatever, but like, okay, so I'm a like Xennial. I'm like on the cusp of Gen X and like maybe a millennial, depending on where, you know, that particular line falls. I could be on either side of it. Born in 1980. So that's like, you know, right on the cusp. And for me, so when I was coming up, I was, you know, I got to be like an adolescent or a teenager just when the 80s had ended or whatever. That was when I was sort of coming into my own and like developing my own tastes and everything like that, becoming a little less impressionable and like having it be sort of like my particular aesthetic preferences instead of just whatever anybody else was sort of, you know, throwing my way. And so when I got to be sort of in my formative years and my adolescent years, the 80s was over and it was kind of a joke. Really, it was kind of a joke amongst like young people at that time, as it always is. I mean, like, you know, young people always laugh at like the last generation, whatever it was that had just passed. And the 80s, let's be honest. I mean, you know, full disclosure, the 80s had a lot of cheese. There was a lot of cheesy stuff that came out of that decade. There was a lot of great stuff that came out of it. I certainly prefer it to, like, you know, the 1970s or certainly the 1960s, but there was a lot of cheesy stuff. But for my money, things started to get kind of badass, like pretty fucking badass, right around like, you know, 1987 or so. So I don't know what it was, but something happened in the late 80s where shit, for my money, shit got a lot less cringy. You know, instead of like Grandmaster Flash, you had Public Enemy, right? Instead of this, like, you know, cheesy, poofy, hair metal, whatever.
Basketball is my favorite sport.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that guy's got no flow at all. I'm sorry to say. And then you get Chuck D and Flava Flav. It's like, come on. There's no comparison. Yeah. But yeah, and then instead of like, I don't know, there's some great like early 80s metal and everything, but you know, some of it's, let's be honest, some of it's a little on the cheesy side. And then all of a sudden in 1987, you get like GNR drops Appetite for Destruction, and shit gets a little bit more badass. You know what I'm talking about?
No, you're killing me with that. But go on.
Anyway, so I'm just trying to paint a picture here. It's like, you know, in the early 80s, you got like Beverly Hills Cop. It's like the heat is all, you know, like just like fucking shit. Jesus Christ, I hate that shit. I'm sorry. And then, you know, in 1987, you get RoboCop, which is like it's a pretty fucking gritty film, pretty badass and like dark, and it's like, you know, the badass 80s have arrived by that point from my money. Yeah. You know? Like, so anyway, that's just sort of like my general. That's where the movie kind of fit into my psyche before I had actually seen it or whatever. So I was like ready for it. You know, it dropped. What did it drop, like 35 or years ago or whatever the fuck it was?
1987. It dropped a few months before I was born.
Wow, nice. So, I mean, you know, it had been a while. I think I was ready for it by this point. And yes, no, it didn't disappoint. It was definitely, it kind of scratched that itch of like, there's something about that particular time, the late 80s turning into the 1990s, where something cool was happening. The zeitgeist was changing. You can feel it in this movie, and you can feel it in the, like I say, the grittiness, the turbo violence, the philosophical themes that are underneath it. I mean, it's kind of a trashy like action film, but it's also a little bit more than that. You know, it's definitely got some like intellectual undercurrents going on underneath it. And yeah, so it really scratched that itch of like, I love this period in like just aesthetically. I love the like mid to late 80s. I think this is a fucking badass period of history and aesthetics and culture. So yes, I really enjoyed it. I knew I was going to. And it's actually not exactly, I've seen a little bit of this movie before, and it was kind of a traumatic experience for me, but that's another story. We'll get to that. But I will say this also about the movie is that in some ways it actually kind of left me a little bit unsatisfied. And maybe I was just sort of expecting too much. Maybe I was like retrojecting my, you know, how much I love Terminator 2 or, you know, these like badass movies at the time, how much I love these things, and just like expecting me to watch this film for the first time and have all that nostalgia sort of like, you know, coming back to me somehow, even though I hadn't seen it or whatever. But I also think that there are reasons for like what was a little bit of a, you know, it left something to be desired, and we'll get into this. I think that there were some missed chances that this movie could have been even deeper than it was, but it was definitely a roller coaster ride. It definitely was. It was like I say, it scratched that itch of like, I love the way that like everything looks at this time, the sort of like cultural touchstones and everything like that. So ultimately, it was pretty satisfying experience.
Hell yeah. So I don't even remember when I was like one of those kids that saw this movie way too early. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like there's some nudity in it. There's now going back and watching it, I was like, I don't remember any. I remember it being violent, but I was like, I don't remember any of the. I couldn't remember if there was any. My nostalgia glasses were like tinting if I remember, because it is rated R, and I'm trying to watch this while my son's up. My son is 6, right? And I was like, I go on the internet and I was like, yo, is RoboCop okay for kids to watch? And of course, I see a Reddit thread and they're all like, no way. There's nudity, there's rape, there's tons of swearing, there's like all this kind of. And I was like, I was like, no, there's no way. This must be just, I must not be remembering this thing right. So I go and I watch it. I shoot my kids off. And, my 6-year-old probably shouldn't have watched it, but it is not as brutal as they made it out to be. There's one scene, there's like one pair of breasts and some dudes' butts in a locker room scene that just flashes by. The implied rape.
I didn't even see that. That must have completely gone under the radar for me.
Yeah.
It's certainly not prominent.
No, it zooms past. It's like a split second. And then there's like an implied rape, which is not even like really that. It's like pretty milquetoast, right? It's like they got this girl. They're like, she's like, ah. They're like, oh. They start cutting her dress, and then RoboCop shows up and shoots the guy in the dick. And like, you don't see any dicks. He just shoots him in the crotch. So, and then there's a couple of F-bombs, and then there is a ton of violence. There are people getting blown to pieces, people exploding into mush. It has all of the best of the grindhouse 80s turbo gore, like of that time period, put onto the big screen, which wasn't a thing. If you wanted to see that level of gore, you had to go watch the underground movies. That wasn't on the main screen these days, right? In those times. But anyway, I watch it. I was like, you know what? Maybe my kid, I'd probably let my kids watch this. My sons, anyways, about 10 or 12. I'd probably let them watch it. I was watching it younger than that. So anyway, back to me. I've always known about RoboCop. Like I said, it came out a few years before I was born. I have an older brother that was born in the 70s. So he's like firmly Gen X. So, and also I grew up in a very rural area. We didn't have all the hot new stuff. We were kind of behind the times on a lot of things. People don't realize before the internet, remote places that were rural, were like 10 years behind everything. I mean, like we had video rental stores. I'm sure you guys, the Culture Dads, are going to remember these. And we didn't have any new movies in there. Like you would go in there and you're still renting like Tommy Knockers and, Terminator 2 and all this kind of stuff when new movies are dropping. And it would just take a long time for the movies to get there. And, there were so many movies in the 80s that it just took you didn't even know which movies were new or not, right? They would say like new releases and they were more expensive to rent. And then you could have all the other ones. And there was just so many that you didn't need that, right? So anyway, going back, let's talk about the RoboCop. I'll do a quick synopsis on RoboCop itself, and then we can really dig into it. So RoboCop is an important film because, number one, it is part of a trilogy between these three guys, being the director, what was his name? Paul Verhoeven, right? You got Paul Verhoeven, and then you have these two creators, Ed Neumeier and Michael Miner, right? And these guys also teamed up for Starship Troopers, and I believe Total Recall. Either Total Recall or it's another Arnold movie. And this is considered like their trilogy, right? So they put this movie together. First of all, these two guys, Ed Neumeier and Michael Miner, come up with this script called RoboCop, and they had all of their ideas and stuff in there. And people thought it was, this is hilarious. In the 80s, people thought the title RoboCop was cheesy, Right? They could in the 80s, this was considered too cheesy for them. So they couldn't find a single director anywhere. Nobody would do it. They were even calling up.
Let's be honest, it is kind of a stupid movie. I mean, well, I don't know about stupid, but it's like it makes it sound less mature than it is. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah,
it's been in part of our psyche for so long that's like you just think of all the aesthetics that go along with that movie when you hear the name. But if you'd never heard of it before and it was like a new movie that came out, you'd be like, what is this? It's like Transformers or something.
Yeah, you hear RoboCop. Like, I don't think of it like that. But back then, these guys that were like big wig directors were probably like RoboCop. It sounds like a Corman film or like some sci-fi original or like
it's like GoBots or something.
It sounds like some corny, cheesy. It sounds corny, right? It sounds like it's going to be corny and cheesy. But that's the thing, is that they didn't read the script. And what happened was they got this guy Verhoeven, who was coming off as he's a, I can't remember, he's Dutch or German or something like that. He's from over there. And he's coming off of a big hit from over there. He comes over here. He says, nah, fuck you guys. I ain't doing this. So he does another movie, which sucks and stinks. And he's like, shit. So he takes another, he's like, I'll take another look at the RoboCops. He takes another look and he's like, nah, fuck this. I'm not doing it. So he puts it down. His wife actually reads the script and she's like, this is brilliant. You should take another look at this. And he picks it up and looks at it and he's like, okay, this is great. I want to do this movie. So he gets together with it. They wanted all these different guys and everything. They tried to get Schwarzenegger to be RoboCop because after Terminator, they tried to get Stallone. They tried to get all the big guys. They couldn't get fucking anybody to be RoboCop because most of the movie you got to have your head covered. So no big wig actor wanted to do that. So they got this fella named Pete Weller. I can't even remember what else he did. I've never heard anything else he did. And they got this lady named Nancy Allen, who was like a TV sweetheart. Like I think she was from what was that show she was from? What the heck was it? It was like one of the teeny bopper 80s TV shows. Mike would probably, if I said it, Mike would be familiar with it. But anyway, so they put that together. They get the practical effects guy from the movie The Thing, right? You can't miss with that guy, right? He's like the best ever. So they put all this together and they get Basil Palladores to do the film score, who is the guy from Conan the Barbarian. The guy that did this film score for Conan the Barbarian is on RoboCop. So they get like this really awesome team together. It's actually sort of a disaster when they filmed it because they film it in Texas in the middle of summer. The dude, Pete Weller, has to wear this ridiculous suit in the blazing heat. Guys are passing out. People are fainting. They're having the practical effects guy. If you remember the scene, Mike, where Alex Murphy, cop, when he gets grabbed up by the bad guys and they kill him for the first time, when he's like, ah, that's actually a robot because Pete Weller was so exhausted from the heat that he couldn't do a scene. So they literally built a prop. He was that screwed up. So doing this film was like a nightmare. The guys on the crew that did this movie, they said this was the hardest thing they ever did. And after this was over, they considered quitting doing movies. It was so nuts. When they did like explosion scenes and everything, some of them were completely out of control, exploded way harder than normal. The police came multiple times. They got fines. Like this movie was a mayhem making this movie. So he puts it together, right? It comes out, and if you watch the movie, so first of all, it got like mixed reviews. Some critics actually thought it was great and they loved it. Some critics didn't get it at all, and they thought it sucked, which always happens. The people, though, the film goers loved it, but not in a way the director wanted. So the guy Verhoeven, the director, who's actually a very good director, is also kind of a jerk off. He's like a total leftoid, and he wove a lot of his leftist ideas into his movies, and people just didn't get it, and that pissed him off. In fact, went on. Yeah, it went on that the ideas that he put in there that he wanted to like, these are my progressive ideas. People translated as, oh, well, these are just part of this terrible time period or this terrible, horrible dystopian setting. And then the ideas in there that he's trying to make satire, and not all of them anyway, but some of them, I would agree, some of them land. But some of the other stuff, people are like, this looks awesome, right? He's like, it comes out, like, especially in Starship Troopers. He does Starship Troopers. That comes out. They accused him of being a fascist and like being a Nazi sympathizer and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, no. He's like, it's supposed to be a critique. Like, fucking man. You go to go to the people. He's like, did you see the cultural critique in my film? Yo, bro, I saw when the dude got shot in the dick. Right? He's like, he's probably getting he's like, 9, not like this. Like, getting so bad. RoboCop himself comes out. Citizen, you are a like, it's just like, it had to have been so frustrating and such a disaster for him that his like vision, his vision for these films, half of it got completely mistranslated, and I don't know. It was just, I think that's fucking hilarious. But going back to RoboCop in and of itself was, as Mike said, is almost a critique of the 80s. And it was a critique of the Reagan era of capitalism. There's a lot of these themes in there. We're going to talk about all of that. But if you guys want to go watch the making of the film, it's actually pretty. This Verhoeven guy is actually, like most really great directors, complete fucking psycho. This guy, he made Pete Weller put on this. They built the suit, the RoboCop suit, literally like finished it the day before shooting. By the time they get the suit on set, they're already shooting. And they put Pete Weller in this suit, and it's like really weird and hard to move. He's like, dude, I need some practice in this. And Verhoeven's like, no practice. We gotta shoot now. Practice while we shoot. And it was just it was like really tough. But Pete Weller, like, if you watch the movie, like you watch how he moves and everything, he did a fucking awesome job to make you believe that he was a robot, right? At least I thought so.
Yeah, he definitely has a herky-jerky kind of like motion or whatever. Like, I don't know if that was like helped by the shittiness of the suit or whatever, but yeah, apparently they would like the suit was like a huge problem for them when they were shooting on like multiple levels. Like it wouldn't fit into the car, so they had to like adjust it or like whatever, so that he would be able to take off the bottom half. And like all of the scenes that you see RoboCop that are shot in the car, it's like he's only wearing the top half of the suit. Oh, it must have been a fucking nightmare. But going back to the sort of like leftoid themes in the movie, I think this is the fact that they came through was actually like part of the thing that kind of made me go, oh, not this, you know what I mean? About it. Because like they do kind of shine through, especially for guys like us who are like able to pick that stuff out pretty easily. You know what I mean? The producer, I believe his name was Jim Davison, referred to RoboCop, like the project of the movie, as fascism for liberals. Right? It's like you can kind of see in the film that's sort of like a center-left revenge fantasy on the center-right, right? And I actually read a number of reviews or like analyses of this film going like for prepping for this episode. And it just like reading the reviews, really, I just found myself impatient, getting irritated while I was reading them, because it was the same old like fucking Thomas Piketty, Capital in the 21st Century, center left, critique of the Reagan era or whatever. I am no fan of Reaganism or like the free market or any of this shit, right? Like the 80s, what the 80s was about in terms of ideology, at least in terms of its like economics and whatnot. but it was just like I just found myself getting a little bit irritated by that because it does come through the sort of antipathy towards the corporate culture of the time, which wasn't a great thing or whatever, but it certainly comes through in the movie. And actually, that reminds me of I got to tell the story of how I did see part of this movie anyway when I was young. Yeah. I don't remember when it was, and I believe it was my parents that were watching it, and I was like just sitting down to watch it. I don't think that they had seen it, so I didn't know. I don't think that they knew really what they were in for. And I guess like my dad like let me sit and watch it with them or whatever as he was like watching the first 15, 20 minutes of it. And then that scene comes on where it was just where the ED 209 they're demonstrating it in the the corner office or whatever. And he's like, we all know the scene. It's like probably the most classic scene in the movie where they're demonstrating this enforcement droid. So it's like this like completely automated like policing system, this android thing that's basically like a cop. And something goes wrong with it, right? Where he's like, okay, he tells this junior executive, okay, so you just pick up the gun and point it at the droid, and we'll demonstrate how it disarms you or whatever it is. And he's like, okay, so he points it at the thing, and it says, I forget what the line is exactly, but it's like, drop the weapon, you have 20 seconds to comply, or something like that. And then he's like, okay, all right, so he drops the gun, and then a couple seconds pass, he's like, and then the thing just goes, drop your weapon, you have 15 seconds to comply. And then everybody just freaks the fuck out, right? And eventually the countdown ends, and he blows away this executive dude. I don't remember how old I was when I saw that scene, but it fucking traumatized me. It really did. It totally did. And you know why? It's because when I was, young enough to have seen this movie, probably about 8 or 9 years old or something like that. Not super young, but like young enough. I remember looking at the guy who was the junior executive and being like, he looks like my dad. And he does a job kind of like what my dad did at that point. Like my dad was never like a top executive or whatever, but he was like a manager in like a corporate company.
You wore a suit and all that.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just like, I fucking burst into tears. And I was like, I thought it was you, Dad. It's like, to this day, I can remember that scene just for that reason. Now, it didn't like turn me off the movie or whatever, but it was just like one of those like raw, real fucking moments where I was just like, when you're a kid, you have this empathy where you can kind of like put yourself into other people's shoes more than we can now when we get older and you're a little bit more calloused and whatever. You've grown up and you kind of have to grow a bit of a shell, to live in the real world. But like, when you're a kid, you're a little bit more sensitive to that sort of thing. And it was really fucking traumatic for me. So anyway. Yeah. But there was like, it's a critique of that corporate culture. That's and in some ways, I think that scene is kind of a revenge fantasy, you know what I mean? Against the like, faceless corporate boardroom, like top manager kind of guy or whatever. And there's a lot of that kind of stuff in the movie. Like it's that one dude who I've seen him in like lots of shit since then. It's the guy who invents RoboCop. Is just a snake, you know what I mean? But then again, so is his boss that he like undercuts. Like there's nobody in that company that is a sympathetic character or it's like drawn with any sympathy or whatever. And that's the whole point, right? It's a satire of that world set in the future, like 50 years in the future from when it was made. And it's totally meant to draw a picture of a dystopia, of a world where everything has been privatized. Everything is now sort of, the state and private corporations are like fully entwined and there's really no difference between them. And I think that now for me watching that movie at a time where I understand things the way that I do now, which that is to say that's how it works, dude. Like there was never a time when the state and like private corporations where there were these like separate worlds where, you know, you've got like the private sector and then the public sector and they're kind of at odds and whatever. Like that was never a fucking thing. This is something that we come to understand when you have a political awakening like we have. But you know, in the movie, it's because it's a critique of like Reaganism. It's a critique of like the 80s and everything. You get this sort of private properties buy it kind of like thing, you know, like where it's just it's a little bit simplistic. You know, I guess I'm asking too much of the movie, right? Like maybe I've been ruined on movies because, you know, I'm a political guy now. Just like
it also you're kind of right. It is a very infantile. Like if you look at the deep critique of it outside of they're just making fun of these corpo retards that we hate. Because let's be honest, none of us here listening are a fan of these people.
Not at all.
And I'll tell you, as somebody, I had a job where I was around some of these people. I didn't work with them. I didn't know, they didn't even know my name. I might as well have been a fucking janitor, right? I was the help in a building that was owned by, I don't even know, Fortune 400, 5, whatever. I think a big top money corporation. And very often I was walking through offices when they were having meetings. I had to set things up while they were having meetings, et cetera, like CEOs and stuff like that. And I would have a few minutes at a time to like listen to how they talk. And the one thing in the movie that it was like so spot on that I thought was hilarious was, do you remember the scene where they talk and like the big shots, every time they just say one jerk off sentence, there's like this fake performative clap and it's like really cringy.
Do they do that?
They do that. It's so gay. It is so, dude, that world is so performative and so fake. And like they don't even, these people are like psychopaths. They really, truly are. They don't even like really view each other as human beings. Some of them don't even like view their own families as human beings. Like everything is an investment. It's that level of business, the people that live in that world and were raised in that world. And another thing, you know, there's a lot of nepotism in there, which we like nepotism. Yeah. But part of the problem is that a lot of these people that sit on these seats are on the seats just because, you know, they inherited those seats, which usually is a good thing, but not when the seat itself is like fucked up. And the world is fucked up. You know what I mean? If you're a third generation drug dealer, you know, it's not a good tradition. You know what I mean? Just because it's the third generation doesn't mean it's good. You're still selling fucking heroin. You know what I mean? So it's like that kind of thing. So they have no idea what the regular world is like. They don't know what regular people like or think about, and they don't care. They look at everything as numbers. It's completely bizarre. It's a bizarre place. And you guys out there listening that might have had like interactions with this world, the high up corporate world, will know what I'm talking about. It's bizarre.
Absolutely. I mean, we would never defend these guys or this world or anything at all like that. But there is also a critique that is made of this kind of thing that is really ham-handed and just kind of, you know, meat-headed, like Cenk Uyghur tier, like critique. Yeah. Infantile is exactly the right way of putting it. It's ridiculous, kind of. You know, the idea basically. So in the movie, you've got this like Globo Schlo Gigantor Corpo thing called
Omni Consumer Products.
Omni Consumer Products, yes. And it's sort of a send up of the, like, you know, the giant, you know, mega corporation kind of thing. And the problem with it, like, so basically this corporation has like a contract with the local government in order to you know, carry out its law enforcement ultimately. And the problem with it is not it's the real problem with this situation is the secularization of law. It's the taking of law out of the out of a situation where it's a matter of ultimate concern. It's like you kind of turn law into a commodity kind of thing. Now, this is kind of this is part of the critique that the movie makes, is that you shouldn't commodify something like law or whatever. But it says that law should not be in the hands of a private entity. Fundamentally, this is kind of like what the movie is saying. Now, I don't know if I really agree with that. For this center left critique of capitalism or whatever, the whole problem is that things have been privatized, and that basically if you could just like put these into the public sphere, then that's the solution to everything. Private law, the idea of private law is scary for the libtode. It's not something that you're allowed to have. Basically, the idea is that ultimate authority needs to be projected to the most distant and impersonal, place that you can possibly get it to. These people have a problem with the idea of the ultimate authority being vested in the family father or the local chieftain, or even just like the local government or whatever, right? Like, this is a problem for these people. They hate the idea of intermediary structures. That is, they hate the idea of anything that's kind of in between, let's just say, the little guy and the state kind of thing. And this is something that is, I think, a really fucking terrible critique, and it enshrines everything that these people hate in terms of like oppression and anti-localism or whatever. So anyway, I think again, we're talking about an action movie, so we shouldn't ask too much of it. But I think
wouldn't you say that RoboCop becomes that?
Well, I mean, this is getting, it gets us into some pretty deep territory, because what RoboCop fundamentally is, like, RoboCop is the mechanization of law. And this is part of the problem that so I guess we should say that the ED-209, so this is like the fully non-human robotic enforcer droid, is the mechanization of law. So it's law that is completely stripped of any human decision, completely stripped of anything that would be like, a person exercising judgment. That is what that is. And clearly the director and like the screenwriters and whatever have a problem with that. Now, I want to get into this at some point, because I think that the fear of that is unjustified, and it leads us into some territory that, like, basically, if you reject the idea of legal formalism, you kind of get in, like, this is kind of where liberalism is coming from in some ways, from that rejection. But RoboCop himself is the reintroduction of the human element, the element of judgment and decision, with that sort of like mechanized aspect of law, because of course RoboCop himself has his prime directives, right? To serve the public trust, to protect the innocent, and to uphold the law. And then there's a fourth one that comes in later. But yeah, so that is, if you think of the law as something like an algorithm or whatever, it's like a set of commands or imperatives, because ultimately that's what law is. Just like custom, it's a set of imperatives or commands that tell you, do this in this particular case, or don't do that in this case, or ever, or whatever. It's a set of injunctions or commands. And when these things get formalized, when the commands are followed to the letter, always without error, without any erring or whatever, then, like, liberals don't really like that. They kind of have a problem with, like, the law as being rigorously applied. Now, of course, the enforcement droid thing, it malfunctions and it's fucked up or whatever. But what makes it a monster in the liberal mind, I don't think, is the fact that it makes a mistake. It's the fact that it could, in principle, follow the law to the letter without any human judgment overriding that law or whatever, because of course, like liberals have a soft spot for the person that's been like railroaded by the law or whatever. And, there is room for that, and we can get into that or whatever. But I think that this is kind of like the deepest level at which the movie is making its commentary. And maybe it's the fact that Paul Verhoeven, the director, some of his liberal priors kind of maybe shine through in this respect. But it seems to me that throughout the movie, there's a subtext of fear of the law being applied mechanically or robotically. There's a kind of fear there where the idea that like the law could be enforced by a robot or by something that doesn't really have feelings or human judgment or anything like that, that is like something really dystopian to liberals. Whereas, it could be dystopian. Ultimately, the rigorous application of the law is only as good as the law itself is just. But even assuming that the law is just, I think liberals still have a problem with it. So, that's one of the more interesting sort of like subtexts to the movie itself.
Yeah, I could see some of that. Actually, I interpreted it like the opposite way. I interpreted it as like I think where I think they like screwed up. If that is indeed their imperative of that is like kind of like the how can I say it? If that is like the deep message of the movie, I kind of see it as the opposite, where RoboCop is sort of this force, like this higher man, this man that is a man of great power that acts as this intermediary. Excuse me, that being of the police force, which is over and over again kind of displayed as this Mannerbund, like there's, even though there's women in there or whatever, which by the way, he very much, so this was something like the women in the locker room, and there's a lot of things that people don't catch on. So Verhoeven was like trying his best to like portray this like progressive society, and for some reason he decided to do his progressive society when he's also doing a dystopian society. So it's like he's got women in the locker room. There's co-ed locker rooms. He's got women on the police force. He's got this turbo multicultural society, but they're all poor and crime-ridden and horrible. It's like, what part of your worldview are you trying to show in a good light? You know what I mean? You really fucked up there. So what I interpret RoboCop to be is this sort of this man who's in charge of this Mannerbund, acting as his intermediary, because both the state and the corporations, which have become one in this incestuous that they've always been a thing, right? I don't view a difference. I think this. I believe in what's that called? Command economy or whatever. I think that there should be what's that called? I can't remember what it's called. You know what I'm talking about. But in there, the way I see it is they had the traditional like democracy format. It got so fucked up that it created an environment in which this like cyberpunk corpo evil entity could start taking over and becoming this Nicklandian, Amazon entity, and go to its furthest extent of buying entire cities and owning everything. And even that is corrupt. And what has happened is this intermediary, this man who leads this Mannerbund, acts as this intermediary that doesn't necessarily he's not part of the corpos. He's not really part of the government. He's a part of nobody, and he just kind of serves. He's part of his tribe, and he's part of the community, but he's also sort of above it. And the message of the movie to me was that despite what are they called? OCP, Omni Consumer Products, OCP. Yeah. Despite OCP trying to like code him and program him and turn him, they literally call it part of the narratives. One of the narratives of the film is this battle between OCP and RoboCop himself in trying to frame him as a product and not a human being. And there's a lot of other narratives and stuff that go in, like his relationship with his wife and his family. He's like, he goes, I can feel them, but I can't remember them, and he can't get over them. There's a lot to be said there. It's if this is a positive view of transhumanism, they did a very, very bad job. So I view it very much as this kind of like chieftain rises up and becomes a thorn in the side of all of the corrupt institutions, the corrupt modern institutions, and he acts almost as this tribal warlord sort of character that at the end of the day doesn't have to listen to them, and he takes things into his own hands and like brings justice to everybody. So there's in RoboCop 2, which I don't want to, because Mike didn't watch it, but in RoboCop 2, which is a little sillier, it's not as good. It's cool if you love RoboCop, but it's like, you know, it's a 6 out of 10 movie. It's not a great movie. There's some really dumb shit in it. Some of the characters aren't nearly as good. The bad guys in RoboCop 1 are awesome, and they're really gay in the second one. But one of the things that occurs in the second one is the mayor is this kind of what is it, like a Southern preacher, Martin Luther King-esque, black. He's the mayor, right? He's like, and I'm gonna bring power to the people kind of guy, and he's beefing with the corpos. He makes a deal with drug dealers, and you would think that a liberal that's really trying to be smart about how they frame their heroes and their characters would not make him a fucking weasel, and they make him this absolutely corrupt, unlikable weasel. He's a piece of shit, and it's just like it feels like Verhoeven. I don't know what happens in his creative process, but he clearly has these priors. He puts these things in, and I think what happens is he takes this ingredient that he thinks is like good, and he throws it into this chili that he's making, and it just fucking dissolves and becomes part of the chili. You know what I mean? And all of the narratives that he really wants to put forth, if they either completely get messed up and interpreted the opposite way, or they become really convoluted and like qualitative and hard to discern. Because like what me and Mike are talking about the same thing, and we had completely different interpretations of it. Right? Yeah,
exactly. That's a good point, actually. I think, you know, if what he's trying to do is to get a message across, which I think is probably the case, then the message is pretty muddled by him just wanting to throw a whole bunch of things into the stew that don't necessarily fit together. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that gives you a something where you can like read a lot of stuff into it wherever you're coming from. And you know, I'm not going to say that, you know, we're reading stuff out of the movie that we want to see, but that there's just a lot of different things to be seen that are maybe at odds with each other in some ways. Now, kind of going back to what we're talking about with the RoboCop as a kind of node of decision, or like something that kind of like sticks out that is kind of a problem for the Omni Consumer Products Corporation or whatever. I guess I would push back on that just a little bit, because so when I was watching this movie, I was like thinking, okay, so I know where this is going to go, and this is going to be based as hell. This is going to be so awesome. And then they didn't go there, and I was like, oh, shit. So I'll tell you what I mean by that. So I think that RoboCop, this movie, had a chance to say something really deep about the idea of law versus decision, or judgment, law versus judgment. But it didn't actually make this point. I was totally expecting it to do that. So the law is something that's fundamentally mechanical, right? The law is kind of like a formal system of rules, where the rules, more or less, in most cases, kind of produce an outcome, or they produce a decision. that is obvious based on the rules. It's like if you are going over 100 in this particular place in your car, then you get a speeding ticket. Like that is the rule, kind of thing. It's very clear and unambiguous. But in some cases, there are situations where it's not clear, where one rule kind of contradicts another or whatever, right? And this is where decision comes in. This is where judgment comes in. And judgment and decision is something that's necessarily above the law, almost by definition. It comes in to arbitrate, in these cases, right? Or sometimes it just overrules the law for reasons that are outside of the law, maybe reasons that are moral as opposed to legal. What happens when one law contradicts another. For example, in the movie, there are these 4 directives, and I mentioned them before: serve the public trust, protect the innocent, and uphold the law. But there's a 4th directive that comes in partway through. I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's like, don't harm anyone who works for Omni Consumer Products or something like that.
Yeah, they can't be under arrest.
Yeah. You can't arrest anyone from OCP, right? But I thought that the movie was going to go here, and it was going to say, what happens when Directive 4 directly contradicts Directives 1 through 3, which it does, right? Because Jones, the top, well, not the top CEO, not the executive CEO guy, but the guy's just under him, the number 2 guy, who's just completely corrupt weasel character, is he's basically running a gigantic racket with OCP. What happens when the public trust, when upholding the law, is contradicted by this other directive of don't arrest that guy? Well, what I was expecting is that the movie was going to make RoboCop make a decision between those different directives, and that decision, like in the scene where Jones takes the old man hostage, it really missed this opportunity in my view. I totally thought it was going to do that it was going to make RoboCop make a decision between these directives, and this decision was going to basically enshrine his humanity, that he was going to get his humanity back by making this decision. Instead, the plot of the movie, it removes the contradiction between the directives when the old man says to Jones, all right, you're fired, so therefore Directive 4 no longer applies, and he can kill Jones. It would have been way better, in my view, if RoboCop had to deal with that contradiction and exercise judgment. This would have reinforced his humanity. He would have had to make use of his will and his intuition. And that is the essential feature of what it is to be a living creature, as opposed to a computer program, right? It's the difference between a living organism and a machine, is to exercise your will. So I think that was kind of like a missed opportunity, and it actually reinforces the idea that RoboCop is just this thing that's like an algorithm that's beholden to a set of formal rules, that he couldn't do that. He couldn't arrest Jones without that contradiction being resolved from the outside by a person who is the executor of will. So that's ultimately the old man or whatever.
Doesn't he sort of do that at the end though?
How so?
Where he goes up, he can't shoot the guy, but he goes around. He willingly goes around it by showing the evidence that this guy, he goes all the way up to shooting the guy, and he shows the evidence and all this shit. And finally he's like, you're fired. And he's like, okay, now I can do it. So he went up there with the will and the intent to do it, which, and then at the end, he's like, what's your name? He goes, Alex Murphy. And he says, Alex Murphy. He doesn't say RoboCop. So it does sort of do that at the end.
Well, I suppose, yeah. I mean, in a way, I mean, RoboCop himself is not the decider. He's not the one that actually has to decide between the different directives. Ultimately, the one directive is just completely taken out of the picture for him. But yeah, I guess you could say perhaps in a way that he makes the decision to submit the evidence to the decider. So that is, I could see that. I could see how
and
that's
also the directive 4. If you remember, he is fully intent. His intent is to arrest, but the directive 4 like physically shuts him down. So
right.
It's like, what matters more? Is it the act of doing it, or is it him making the decision? Because clearly
it's like the intent that he has, right?
The intent, and that is like law now. All of law now is discerning intent. By all intents and purposes, he intended on doing that, right? He made that decision. The decision was there. It's just that he was physically incapable of doing it. So I don't know how you would interpret that. How does that change what you're talking about, or is it? Let me hear it.
Yeah, no, I could see where you're coming from on that, where it's the intentionality. So, I mean, ultimately what law is it's a set of commands. And what commands are fundamentally is the transference of intentionality from one person to another. So when you command your son to clean his room or whatever, really what you're doing is you're saying, do my will, right? You're essentially imposing your intentionality onto him or whatever. And I suppose that in a way, like RoboCop's intentionality, like as a human being, that's not just an algorithm. He has the intentionality to show the evidence to the old man. I can't remember now. He goes up there with the intention to actually arrest Jones?
Yeah, he says you are under arrest. And he's like, sorry, you can't arrest me because of this. He's like fighting so hard to point his gun at him. He's getting ready to shoot him. Like if that directive 4 didn't physically shut him down, Jones would have gotten arrested. That was RoboCop's will. That was his intentionality, was to do that. Right. So I don't know if that matters. It
complicates the situation because like what this directive is doing is it's like imposing like a physical constraint on RoboCop, where it's no longer a matter of like purely judging between the directives and being like which one is like the higher priority ultimately. It's sort of like it physically denies him the will, or like it sort of like curtails his will from being able to actually carry out like to make the decision by making the decision for him by like shutting him down or whatever. It's interesting because it really does kind of like complicate that question. But I think in the movie's credit or whatever, it really does raise that question. That question is under the surface throughout the movie, but like especially towards like the denouement or the climax or whatever, where it's like, what matters more, the rules or the human judgment to enforce the rules? I think that like this is where the movie actually does get at some like quite deep philosophical issues, right? It gets at that, like, from a legal perspective. And again, this sort of comes back to what I was saying before about how I kind of get the idea that Verhoeven himself, falling on the political side of the spectrum that he does quite transparently, has a problem with the idea of like rigorous formalism, with the idea that that the law could be applied mechanically, that the robot is kind of like this authority that cannot be appealed to. Like it seems to me that the under the subtext of the whole movie is that you can't trust machines to bring order. Like even though
you can in RoboCop.
Yeah, but only in that RoboCop isn't quite a robot. He's not quite a machine. There's something else there too, right? There is that kind of ghost in the machine. There is that like spark of like human intentionality that like is there inside of him. And that is the thing that I think ultimately brings what would you call it? Like redemption into the movie, right? Where fundamentally that's what makes him good. That's what makes RoboCop good. It's that human element. And the idea that the law can't be applied mechanically, that you can't just always stick to the rules or whatever is, I don't know, man. I kind of go two ways on that. It's a deep question, right? It depends, like, what side of the bed did I wake up on today? Did I wake up on the Odinic side where I think decision is what really matters? Or did I wake up on the Tyrrhic side where I think that, like, you need to follow the tradition no matter what? And I think that, like, liberals being what they are fundamentally as a kind of like dissolution, or like as a solvent for the social order, or something that dissolves the social order, they will always come down on the side of the Odinic, on the side that's like, trying to transgress or go beyond the boundaries or whatever. These people, I think, have a very strong antipathy towards the idea that, like, order could be mechanically applied, that in their bones they hate this idea. And it's actually a very ancient idea, the idea that, like, you have to have someone exercising judgment over the law, right? It goes back to this idea, it's called legal equity. So originally, like, the law was something that was formal and rigorous. It was like, you follow the rules no matter what the outcomes are. And this would obviously at some point produce a situation where people would follow the law, but then they could get completely fucked as a result of it. You can see this in, like, any number of Norse sagas, right? Where guys would enter into an oath, but then keeping that oath would force them into an impossible choice. Usually the choice in the sagas is between a revenge killing that is absolutely required by morality and law, and having to take that revenge on a kinsman, right? Kinslaying. So it's an impossible choice. You also get this in, like, Greek tragedies and things like that, where you can follow the rules, you could do everything right, you could be a perfectly upstanding man, and if you do, you might still get fucked by the gods, and that's not fair. But that's what makes tragedy powerful, right? So originally, this idea of, like, legal formalism was something that, like, ancient peoples were just simply willing to accept, right? But as time kind of wore on, and you got structural conflict, the idea of, like, the alliance between the high and the underclass versus these intermediary structures that we're saying that RoboCop kind of represents. Eventually, as time went on, people decided that they themselves were in a position to judge the law. And this is a tough question, right? Because that sounds really gay, right? Like, every man himself being his own high priest or high, supreme judge over the law, where an outcome at one point, like, got to a point where an outcome was no longer considered just, simply because of the fact that the laws had been observed. And then the laws themselves get put on trial, and you get all kinds of, like, axial bullshit, like Socrates comes in, Plato, it feels like he's in a position to judge Homer, and so on and so forth, right? And this was especially the case in Christian times, when judging, the immemorial tradition became enshrined in our spiritual life. But it happened even earlier. It's not a Christian thing. It happened in Rome with the overthrowing of kings and everything like that. Again, it comes about through structural conflict. And eventually this led to what we call legal equity, which is the idea that the law itself can be judged, not only by the sovereign, which is kind of another story, but by, like, someone that the sovereign deputizes, like RoboCop, for example. The basic idea of legal equity is that the law is itself not a guarantee of justice, that sometimes it can produce unjust outcomes, and you need a judge to step in at that point and overrule the law. And historically, this produced what we call courts of equity, whose job was just to override the law. In England, this was the Court of the Chancery. There was some state courts in the United States that were allowed to basically overrule the law, and they would just issue special dispensations where the law was, like, judged to be insufficient. So it seems to me that the introduction of this idea that the law itself can be judged, and especially the idea that the law can be judged by just anybody, is corrosive to the idea of tradition. It's corrosive to the idea of authority and of command in general. You cannot you cannot be the source of commands and also bound by commands. It's just sort of impossible. So this idea that liberals have that the law cannot be mechanically applied, like that the mechanical application of the law is going to lead you into trouble every time, that to me seems like something really, really corrosive. And I kind of get some of that coming out of this movie, and might be coming out of the director and where he's coming from. And the ultimate sort of like, point of the movie seems to be that you need to have a human being making those decisions, kind of thing. And I don't know how I feel about that. Like I say, some days I think that that's based, and that like that just means that sovereignty is conserved, and other days I think that's really anti-traditional. Do you know what I mean? Is any of this making sense, or am I just like talking bullshit?
No, it makes perfect sense. And it's kind of it's hard with this movie, with RoboCop, to even say which side it's on, because exactly. RoboCop is 50-50 man machine, right? It seems like he's upholding the law with just like mechanical precision, right? It's like, is he a formalized executor of the law, or is he a man making decisions? And this also goes into, this is a really great question, right? I actually like that there's no defined answer to this question for it, because it's like it to me, the whole point of it is to have the question. It's pretty much like saying, I don't know. Which one is it? You know what I mean? So we're going to put both out there and have this guy that's kind of like a mix of both. But the guy himself is kind of, he's an internal mess as well, right? They try to turn him into a product. They bully him into saying that he's just they literally extort the guy, right? He starts to figure out who he is. He starts to remember who he is, and all this kind of stuff, which I thought was like, if liberals were, I don't know if there could be a more damning kind of demonstration of transhumanism here.
Oh yeah.
It literally just says the entire time that the human ontology is not something that can be measured. It's not something you can put into a computer. It's not something you can get rid of. It's like all that's left of him is some of his digestive system, some of his torso, and his brain and everything. And like everything else is robot. And it's saying that there is an aspect of his being that you can't measure, you can't see on your screen, you can't do anything to get rid of. As long as he's somewhat intact, but Alex Murphy is still there. So it's like there's this like essentialism that goes with humanity, which like completely flies in the face of materialism, right? So it's like they did a really bad job of doing that. They're like they extort the guy. This was probably my favorite part of the movie, and it's like the most heartbreaking, where he sort of like starts stalking his wife, his widow, and she comes in and they record him. They're like, are you a man or are you a machine? And he's like, I am Alex Murphy. And they're like, they like turn it off. Dude, what do you think you're going to do? You're torturing this poor woman. She thinks you're dead. He's like, it's not you. You're not Alex Murphy. You are RoboCop. And what you're doing here is you are putting this lady through far more than what she deserves. What are you going to do? And this part was like pretty fucked up, right? And it shows it in the movie. They did a really good job showing this. He says, what are you going to do? You can't give her a man's love. What are you going to do? What are you going to do for her? You don't offer her anything. And you could see like so Pete Weller does such an excellent job, like displaying emotion while being a fucking robot. Like he just like kind of like looks down callously, robotically, and like looks up. And you could just see the hurt on his face, like the heartbreak on his face. And like everybody, even the people that are like in the corp are like, damn, this is fucked up. What are we doing? And then they bring his wife in and he says, he goes, they built this as a memorial to your husband. He is dead. I am not your husband. I don't know you. And it's just, she's like completely fucking busted and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, she runs off. She's in tears and he walks away. And you could just see on the face that what he did was that fucked him up. Even though he makes no facial expressions. That Weller guy really did a tremendous job playing this part. Who would have thought playing a robot would be so emotional, right? So what this really puts out there is that no matter what humans try to do in their Faustian demonic quest to merge man with machine, what this says is like, you can never do that. And what you come out with is going to be something fucked up. Right. So it also the commodity, like I like the critique, like if you don't go real deep into it, just at the face value, the mocking of Mick World of capitalism, I actually love it. You know, these like stupid fucking commercials, they're selling stuff. Their car's called the sucks 6000,
the SUX. Yeah,
the SUX, the 6000 sucks. You know, like it's just, I thought that part was funny because I am so sick of Mick World. I see commercials and they just look they just disgust me. Consume, right? Everybody's disgusted with this. And back in the day, back in the 80s, like that wasn't, you know, people were like kind of onto that. They're like, wow, this is kind of stupid. But like, especially now that we've seen the conclusion of where that goes, like out of control capitalism and consumerism and stuff, that like is more relevant today than it ever was back then. But going back to the question of humanity and merging of humanity and robotics, RoboCop does a wonderful job of showing that what you come out with is going to be fucked up. And the important parts of humanity are parts that you can't measure, are parts that you can't put into a computer. Elon Musk is never going to be able to put a consciousness inside of a hard drive. We're never going to be able to be cyborgs. And if they try, what they're going to make is monstrosities. And RoboCop is one of these monstrosities. He part of his whole deal is the pain that he carries, knowing that he is a fucking monstrosity. He is a Frankenstein, right? So it's like, you know, it's. I think that's a really important. But it's probably my favorite part of the film, actually. And speaking of that part of the film, there was a remake in 2014 that came out, and it got completely shit on by RoboCop fans. They fucking hated it, and there were some reasons to hate it. It was not as cool. It didn't have any of the. It wasn't funny at all. It didn't have any satire. The production of that film was actually a mess. They brought in this, I can't remember what director they originally brought in, but he cooked the whole thing up to be a subversion of RoboCop, that because he thought the movie sucked, so he's going to make a whole fucking anti-RoboCop movie.
What the fuck?
Yeah, so thankfully the guys in charge were like, yeah, we're not doing that. People are going to fucking hate that. So they fired him. They brought in another guy. That guy didn't get what was going on. Something happened with him. So they went to this like revolving wheel of directors as they're producing the movie. They went way over budget. So they finally landed on this one director who was the opposite of the first guy. He's like, we just need to make a faithful adaptation, a faithful remake of RoboCop for today. And what happened was there's parts of the movie that are like critiques of RoboCop, and there's parts of the movie that are sort of like just skin suit, soulless, like remake of RoboCop, just kind of like following the footsteps, but with this just new graphics. They switched out the commentary of their day for the commentary of our day. Like instead of New Detroit, they're fucking around in Iraq, like wars in Iraq. Instead of busting on Reaganism, they start busting on Fox News. They got Samuel L. Jackson to play this like kind of Bill O'Reilly type character. And it's just, it fucking whiffed on so much. But the one thing that I think that it did not whiff on, and also people were mad they didn't use the clay animation for the big robots. But I was like, dude, come on. In
Really?
2014, are they going to use
Come
claymation in 2014? They're not going to do that, right? So anyway, another thing that they ripped on was that it was too emotional, right? They just said they did too much backstory. There was too much to do with his family and his wife, et cetera, et cetera. And I actually think in the first RoboCop, after I watched that RoboCop, which I was one of the grognards, I hated it when it came out. And then recently I went back and rewatched it with a fresh set of eyes. It's like, okay, let's give this thing a chance. So I gave it a chance, and some of the stuff I still hated. But the critique of going into his relationship with his family and his struggle with like his humanity and him losing his humanity and gaining it back and et cetera, et cetera. I thought that was the best part of the movie. And after watching that, I actually think the first RoboCop could have done a little more with that. In the first RoboCop, I understand it's the 80s. It's an action movie. It's intended to be an action movie, but it sort of feels a little, what would be the word for it? The scenes where like he goes to his old house and he like starts like revisioning and he starts getting these like emotions. He punches the screen. He's trying to remember himself and he like looks himself up on the records and all this kind of stuff. I understand, but it feels like that is just kind of like a very brief, it's almost like a plot device in order to justify his motivation for going to just murder the big, gangster boss, which is actually read from that 70s show.
Yeah, I know. I realized that. That's kind of funny.
I think that was his best role. He was so fucking weird and scummy in that movie and like completely out of his gourd. I thought he did great in that. I actually really loved the bad guys in the first RoboCop. But anyway, going back, that question of man and machine is probably, in my opinion, as far as storytelling goes, is one that is unique to our time period, and it is a very important question to ask. I think a lot of people today are still like, oh, well, we don't even need to talk about this question. We don't need, that's never going to happen. They're never going to try this. That they still think it's far-fetched that, the direction that society's going, that they're eventually going to attempt some kind of merger between man and machine, whatever that may be. Obviously it's not going to be a RoboCop cyborg. It's probably going to be some kind of gene editing. It's probably going to be some sort of, what's Elon Musk's project called Brain Link. It's going to be something like that. That is coming. It's already here. They're already working on it, and they're going to try it. And I think that this is a question that needs to continue to be asked. And it's a question in storytelling that needs to continue being demonstrated and shown over and over again. And I just think that RoboCop does a really good job of saying, look, like, if you guys want to talk about dystopian future, let's talk about the possibility that these uber rich corpo people are going to try to commodify humanity in and of itself more so than they already do. So far that they're going to be able to patent it. Imagine that they start copywriting genetic code. Imagine they start putting patents on genetic code. So anybody that is born with this code that they created, they own, or they do something with their brains where they who knows what they're going to do, that they can own people. That human, like, I know I'm not going into saying like, oh, not a liberal prior saying all slavery bad and like all this kind of stuff. But what I am getting at is that they can get to the point that humanity no longer, like, it's no longer valuable to be a human being, that all of this is just part of the technosphere and we are completely integrated into the technosphere 100% at some point, and there is no longer the sovereignty of man, if that makes sense. Maybe some of that is liberal priors. Maybe some of that is my liberal priors. But I think that idea scares me, and I think RoboCop does a good job of demonstrating the scary part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think all that stuff is underneath the surface in the movie, and like that, the fact that you've drawn it out it's not like reaching at all. It's definitely there, and it's an issue. It's an issue that I think actually, back before I was like really political, or one of the things that kind of made me political, that actually kind of turned me away from libertarianism back when I was a libertarian, was that, so back in the day, like I was a musician and I really resented the idea that people would file share music, not just my music or whatever, but like any music. And this sounds kind of weird. I mean, it's probably hard for people to understand, put themselves in that perspective now, because it's just, that's what people do. That's just how you get music now. But I always found it really tasteless and pretty insulting to musicians that people would just like consume their content and not pay them. I always found that to be like something kind of shitty or whatever. And back in the day, back when, it's interesting that you mentioned the RoboCop reboot around 2014, because about that time, this was like the big story in 2013, 2014 was Edward Snowden and the WikiLeaks and things like that, about like spying. Basically, the idea that privacy, before the Snowden leaks, people just kind of like assumed that, yes, okay, the government sometimes spies on terrorists and everything like that, but they don't spy on normal people most of the time, right? And then it came to light with this guy's leaks that basically the government has got like these enormous like dragnet fucking things where it's like they're just basically like completely casting their net as wide as they can and scooping as much information as they can and spying on everybody, and then like going through and combing through information as they feel that they need it or whatever. And the idea was that privacy was completely destroyed. And I remember back in the day thinking to myself, like folding this into my sort of idea about how, that owning of owning intellectual property, right? Of the idea of like owning a song. So if you're the creator of a song, that like someone has actually done you wrong if they have like stolen your content and like consumed it without paying you or whatever. And I remember thinking to myself, I could see this kind of getting extended. Yes, okay, it's like it's not really that big a deal of like listening to somebody's song and not paying them, but it's a wider issue than that. It's the idea that like you can own information was at this time, people would laugh at you if you'd say that. If you said you should be able to own an idea, you should be able to own information. And I remember saying to them back in the day, what about your DNA? Can you own that? Can somebody, should you be able to legally block or forbid somebody from cloning you? And people would be like, it's just not relevant, okay, that's information, but like that's never going to happen. Well, here we are, right. 10 years later, and where are we at? We're at a point now where it's entirely probable, maybe not possible, but like in the very near future, it could be possible that somebody could clone you, and without your say so, without your consent or anything like that. There is a case to be made that you should be able to own your own DNA sequence, or that nobody should be able to certainly to own your DNA sequence, right? It's like this is all becoming relevant. These are all becoming live, ethical and legal issues, and they will be only more so going forward. And I think that these issues of can you, what part of you really is your own, is something that is there in this movie with RoboCop. And to its credit, it doesn't offer you any easy answers in this regard. And now this may be an artifact of, the fact that the director was trying to say too many things at once. Maybe it is. Maybe it's from his own genius. But either way, the movie that we got does not give you any final answers in this. Dave and I have just been sort of throwing around ideas for an hour and a half about what is this movie really about? What is it really trying to say? What is the message? And what we're coming up with fundamentally is a question at the end of it. And that's really good. I kind of shit on Plato a little bit earlier, but ultimately at the end of the day, I actually really respect Plato. And here's why. Is because in most of his dialogues, almost all of his dialogues, he doesn't give you an answer. He gives you the problem with every possible answer to a question, right? He'll raise a question like, what is justice? Or, he'll raise the Euthyphro dilemma or anything, any number of like issues. He will raise them and then completely undercut any answer that's given to any of these questions. For the most part, that's what he's doing. He rarely ever gives you a dogmatic and firm take on a question. And that's why he's brilliant. That's why I respect Plato. And sometimes I say that Plato was too smart to be a Platonist, because Platonists take what they believe to be his dogmatic assertions and basically run with them, where I think Plato was much more nuanced than any of that. And that's what makes a Platonic dialogue great. It usually ends in aporia, which is like an open question. And this movie, in a 1980s thriller, action movie with lots of gore kind of idiom, is kind of doing something similar. It's very undecided. It's not clear whether RoboCop is a man or a machine. It's not really clear, whether decision or rigorous formalism is the answer. All these questions are kind of swirling around in this stew that we talked about earlier, and it doesn't give you any easy answers. And I think that's why when I was watching it, it gave me a lot of food for thought. And in some ways, I was a little unsatisfied with the fact that it didn't give those answers. But kind of thinking back to it now, maybe that's actually the movie's strength, and maybe that's why it has endured so much and become like a cultural touchstone for us to this day.
I really believe that part of the reason that it has endured so much and it's so beloved and nostalgic and all of these reasons is just because it's a fucking exciting movie. It has a great soundtrack. There's lots of gunfights. There's pretty girls all over the place, sexy ladies. There's people getting blown apart. There's bad guys that all get killed. And there's a fucking cool robot cop that goes around and, you're under arrest, scumbag. Like, how could what are you going to do? I mean, we could talk about there are philosophical questions underneath all of it. And I think it's fun to definitely dig into them. And maybe that's why like the action and the awesome and all of the stuff behind it is like that deep lore is there for us to dig into, but you don't have to.
Yeah.
You can just watch the movie and laugh and have a good time and it has like all of the feelings in it. You know what I mean? There's heroism, there's excitement, there's there's sadness, there's heartbreak, there's overcoming and rising, there's tragedy, there's revenge, there's like all of this shit. It's like all tied into one. And plus cool robots and like practical effects and blood and guts. And it's just, what are you gonna do? You can't fuck with that. You know what I mean? Yeah. I do like that there is this undercurrent that's kind of not there in some of the. We can't have this discussion about Commando, right? We can't have this discussion about First Blood or Bloodsport.
I think there is some of that in First Blood.
No, I don't.
But yeah, I take your point. I get where you're going with this.
There's some. Okay, there's some in First Blood, but not that much.
not as much as what we've just been talking about.
No, definitely not. But yeah, I think RoboCop is. I don't know. I love the film. I absolutely just love the film, and even some of the. I don't know. To me some of the best stuff is stuff that can be interpreted in different ways. Like you said, it's like this platonic question, this dilemma. It presents this dilemma that doesn't even offer any real answers. Like at the end, it was like the end scene, even though it's like epic, if you like say, recall the end scene, RoboCop goes up and gets revenge and gets justice and declares his humanity. And like, that's true. but it's also kind of a confusing scene, the end scene, because he goes up and he can't override Directive 4, which means he is a machine.
Yeah.
He goes up, he plugs himself in and shows his mechanical nature. He recorded the conversation with the guy in his head. Humans can't do that. He goes up, acts like a machine, shows that he's bound by these kind of these laws of robotics that he has imposed upon him. But then also he gets justice, and when he's presented with the question of who are you, he says, I am Alex Murphy. So it was like this 50-50. It's like machine, man. I'm neither, and I'm also both. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of undecidable, and I think that's really cool. I really like the ambiguity. But yeah, you're right. I mean, fundamentally, this movie has done well and become a cultural touchstone because it's just exciting. It looks cool. And there's like some like cool shit that just gets you jacked up when you're watching it. Like RoboCop just looks like fucking badass. Like everybody has seen the character before. Everybody can like instantly tell you when they see that where that came from. And there's definitely like parts of the movie, because I'd never seen it before, I'm like, oh, that's where that came from. Like I've heard, I'll buy that for $1. I've heard that so many fucking times. You know what I mean? It's like, so this movie has had a massive impact. It is definitely entered into the cultural consciousness. And if you're like me and you're a retard who's never seen it, you got to get out there and fucking do it. You just have to.
One of my favorite scenes isn't even like an important scene. It's probably my favorite scene is, and it's a little bit disjointed and happens really quickly. Kind of the pacing is a little weird. Like they kind of rush through his origin story a little bit. And he gets blown up. They turn him into RoboCop, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. And the first time that he just and walks out and gets into the car and he's just driving and it goes and shows him driving in the cop car. That's my favorite fucking scene, because it's just like, you're just like, oh yeah, here comes the justice. Yeah. I don't know why. It's just like that conveys like RoboCop is here, right? You are under arrest. Like I don't know why. That's my favorite scene. That you hear that theme in the movie for the first time. He's like fully formed RoboCop and he's on the streets and like bad guys are getting ready to die. And I don't know why. That just my favorite parts of things, like I absolutely love the philosophical questions behind things. And I absolutely love the looking at motifs and analyzing XYZ. But my favorite scenes and my favorite parts of things, like there are certain songs I listen to, and my favorite part of the song will be how the drummer hits a china in a certain way, or a splash cymbal, or a way that the guitar player just like bends a string, and like kind of like I just love these like parts that aren't really that, I guess they're not that crucial, but to me they are, because they add this like, I don't know, the parts that really speak to me on that pre-rational level, right? Like the ooh ah with a fucking a china cymbal, or like how a guitar player will just bend a string, even if he just does it once or twice in a song, and it's just like a brief second. And just in fucking RoboCop, where he's just like, he's finally RoboCop and he's in his car, and it's just like it's not even a 30-second scene, it's like 20 seconds, and it plays this theme, and it's got that the blue kind of the bluish color palette to the whole scene. Yeah. He's like in that like matte black shitty cop car with the lights going, and RoboCop is here. I don't know why, but that speaks to me, and I remember that, and I love that, and that gets me excited so much more than like all other things. I don't know why.
Yeah, ultimately it's kind of hard to quantify these things, and I kind of feel that way about this time period, like 1987 or 88. There's just a lot of cool music started to come in around this time. A lot of cool movies started to get made and shit like that. Like there was something, and it's completely below the threshold of consciousness for me. What I liked about it was just like it's going to be hard to even get it across. It's like there was like a few scenes where he's like driving the car out of the police underground parking garage, and he just like boots it into this like ramp that goes up and like to the outside, and when he hits the bottom of it, like it sparks and you can kind of see the spark fly. Yeah. But there's something about like the color palette and the style of car and like even just like the lighting somehow in this that just totally brought me back to like, holy shit, I remember that year. I remember I was alive at that point. I remember what that was like. I've been under those neon lights before. I don't think I can really get it across, but there's something where it's just like from a like base of your spine, sort of like subconscious level where you're just like, I've been there before. I know what that's like. It's like a deja vu kind of thing. Very hard to like even get across what it is that I'm saying here, but it's those things that are like below the threshold of consciousness that you like the most. And if you could explain why, it would probably destroy it actually.
Yeah.
But that is just the kind of shit that we love. This is like, we love it because it's mysterious. We love it because it's something that is like, you love that scene where he's driving the car because it's just fucking, it just does something for you. It does something for you on a pre-rational level that like you will never explain. And maybe it's better if it's not explained. So, and there's a lot of that in this movie. And the director just got a lot of things right in ways that are very hard to quantify.
And speaking of that, driving kind of sort of near my house, there's this, I live in the state of Pennsylvania. We have a joke here in PA that we have 2 seasons, winter and construction, right? Because they are fucking, our highways are actually, we complain about them all the time, but if you go somewhere else that's like really, really bumfuck, their roads are way worse. But our roads are not good. They're not good. They're pretty janked up. So they're always working on them. And we have these old union guys that when they start working on a road, it's like months and months on this strip of road and all this kind of shit. But there's this kind of this like highway, like merger area that they just started. They like build up, but they didn't really do that great of a job. Like it's they left like half of the barriers unfinished, so it looks kind of fucked up, dystopian. It looks like it's falling apart. It's not. They just didn't finish it. I don't know if they are going to finish it. It's been a couple years now. So it looks janked up. But what they did do, which was really weird, was they installed a bunch of these like highway lights, which there's no highway lights anywhere else. Like I've never seen these lights. And they have this weird blue color. I've never seen this anywhere else. They got this weird blue color. So when you come up the ramp, there's like a part where you kind of go over this bump where they stop working, so and you go up onto this area, and you got these blue lights, and it looks like RoboCop, like it looks like old Detroit. So every time I drive up there, I'm like, I feel like I think that's like when I got my boys with me, I'm like, dude, we're going through the RoboCop strip, and everybody knows this is the RoboCop place. So it's I don't know. There
is definitely something to that. Like I know exactly the lights you're talking about, and I obviously never been there, whatever. But you know what? I've been under those lights before in probably in 1987.
They're these weird kind of I don't know why they did it. I guess it's like they want to put lights there that don't blind people. That I don't know, but they're these weird. They look like 80s neon lights or something, but they're these like LED state of the art things that make it look like you're in RoboCop or Terminator or one of those the 80s movies that had that like pale blue neon color palette, Blade Runner. Like you feel like you're in one of those movies when you're driving through here. Plus it's all bumpy and shitty and jacked up. So it's like I don't even know what they're thinking. They must have just been like, Dave drives through here a lot, so let's make it look like an 80s movie.
Let's give him the RoboCop lights. Maybe he'll pay his taxes.
Yeah, no, well, that's not gonna happen. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But yeah, so I don't know. Man, if I was in charge, like if I was a king, I would do all kinds of ridiculous shit like that. They just build shit that is just based for the sake of based. I think we should have stuff like that. You know what I mean?
That's what proper kingship is all about. Dude.
Yeah.
Like what are those pyramids doing? Come on. Like what you know, what purpose do they serve? Just to be based and there. You know what I mean? That's like that's how you know you've got a real sovereign, is when you've got a project like that on the go, especially an intergenerational project.
Yeah, like that. I was reading about that king in Thailand. He was like the last reigning monarch that passed away. Right? The people loved him, dude. I watched his funeral procession. People were crying and throwing themselves in the streets, and they were devastated. And I'm reading about this guy and how he would behave. And it's like, if this guy was in the Western world, people would he would not be appreciated. He used to rent out entire hotels and fill them with concubines and have like week-long sex parties and get multiple, he had like a whole harem of concubines that he would just smash out wherever he wanted. These big luxurious parties. He'd build giant statues of himself and his family members. He'd just go and but I guess he did a lot for the people too. He built beautiful temples and gave people money and did food stuff. So he was literally like an old school style king in Thailand, and the people loved it. I can't even imagine. Can you imagine even like a king in the West, in the United States or Canada or just anywhere in the West, a king doing something like that, has a harem of concubines, like half of them get pregnant, have like bastard kids that get halfway inherit some of his stuff, but they're not as legitimate as his legitimate kids that get everything, but he won't stop banging all these side mistresses, but he's got this this beautiful trophy wife that he walks around and has these luxurious dinner parties with. He probably fucking has a whole farm of Clydesdale that he visits once a year to go ride and get pictures with, and then he just I don't know. Can you imagine a guy like that in the West, and how they would treat him? Yeah. And I'm kind of pointing out the silly, extravagant, ostentatious parts of being royalty. But a guy that would just go in, say a city sucks, and he just shows up to the city with his fucking royal army and says, we're going to rebuild this and we're going to kill all of the bad guys, and we're going to instill a guy that's loyal to me, and we're just going to rule this place with an iron fist. Can you imagine that? Or he just pops up somewhere and he's like, okay, we need healthcare. We're going to build these hospitals, or we're going to build this. He just snaps his finger to build things. Even I think even the positive parts of this, and this is going back to RoboCop. There could never be a RoboCop. You know what I mean? Or a Judge Dredd, because RoboCop and Judge Dredd are kind of cousins, right? Yeah. This intermediary figure that just distributes justice, is on by their own judgment, and it's I don't know. If you look at our crime system. So I've never gotten any charges, but I've just about everybody I know and everybody I've grown up with has either has a felony or has done prison time or whatever. Our system is fucking cruel. The American justice system is fucked. It is not. They're it's not all about rehabilitation. It's not at all about actually punishing people. It's literally about making money. It's all that it's about. It is such a big money maker. It's unbelievable. So if you get busted, here in PA, it's really bad too. We have another joke. We say, Pennsylvania, come on vacation, leave on probation. Because if you get picked up here, it's not like you get a charge and you have to pay a fine. It's you get a charge, then you have to wait for their court date, which you got to hire a lawyer for. And then you hire your lawyer. Then it goes on. And then there's this case and that case. And then you get probation or parole. You do this amount of time in jail. While you're in jail, you have to buy commissary. And then you get sent to work release, and they take half your, not even half, more than half your money. And, XYZ. And it's just like they scam you every level of the way. And it's like, there are so many people that get a DUI or they get, some bullshit charge. And years later, it spirals into their, doing years in prison. And they never really do anything else besides violate parole or violate probation, screw something up, miss fines. Like, missing fines is one of the biggest reasons men go to jail. The number one reason all men in America go to jail is because of child support. So it's like, you miss child support once, they don't give a fuck if you have the money and it's just not there yet. They don't give a fuck if you started a new job. They don't give a fuck about anything. You go to jail, and they garnish all your money, and they force you to work, and you get out with even more fines than when you went in with. So it's like, you go into this system that, unless you're really smart and really disciplined and really have access to money, you're in the system forever. They own you forever. And what we do in America is we think that we are just and all this kind of shit. And we look at places like Russia or places in the Slavic world or places, wherever else in Asia. And we watch cops that just like beat the fuck out of people, right? In Russia, or there's other European countries that do this too. If you're fucking around in these countries, now they're probably different, more different now. But if you're fucking around in these countries, a lot of times the cops just show up and just beat the fuck out of you and tell you to get the hell out of here. Cops don't do that here, right? You get nailed here, you get put in handcuffs, don't resist. And every time you do something wrong, that's another charge. We have this saying, just wait for your day in court, wait for your day in court. And when you wait for your day in court, then you get fucked. And it's just ongoing system. And it's like, and then we look at these guys over there and we're like, how cruel, how barbaric. Dude, I would much rather, if I'm out of line and I'm, if I'm at the bar and I would much rather the cop just like punch me in the face or beat me with a stick and like kick me in the ass and huck me into the street and tell me to get lost. Just like beat the shit out of me and let me go and let me have a bunch of bruises. And even like, I would much rather just like go to the hospital, have my arm in a cast, than fucking deal with a lifetime of this fucking cycle. But here's the deal, is that liberals love this system for whatever reason. They say that they hate it. They say it needs reform. And every time they reform it, it gets worse. It gets worse. It gets worse. It gets more bloated. It gets more convoluted. And the more people get trapped in this fucking system, and they never get out, and it ruins their lives. Right, over some dumb thing you do. Okay, how many 20-somethings have gotten drunk and drove home, right? And like maybe or whatever. How many young guys have like gotten into a fist fight? How many young guys like were down on their luck and just like stole something from a store or like whatever? You know what I mean? That snowballs and spirals into something much worse. Just beat the shit out of the dude. Just beat the fuck out of him and tell him, take the thing back. Let his punishment be there on the spot. Let us have RoboCops and Judge Dreds. Let us have those guys. But the lib is terrified of that. They hate that. That could never, ever be in this world, in the West.
Yeah. It's almost like a more humane and like workable system, like what you're describing there about like how you get punished and then it's over. Kind of thing, right? Like in the ancient world, but they didn't have jail. They didn't have this like Kafka-esque, court system that just like chews guys up and spits them out. What they would do is if you did something and it was, clear that you had done it, they would just cut your nose off and that's it. And you'd just be branded a criminal for the rest of your life or whatever. And that in some ways, I mean, that's cruel, but in some ways it's almost more humane than the throwing them into the meat grinder of the court system, and then they never get out of it, and like they're just for the rest of their lives it's, they're just like living a waking nightmare or whatever. And especially like if you go to jail, like that's cruel. Like throwing somebody in a box for the rest of their life, for 2/3 of their life, that is fucking cruel, right? And what I mean, ultimately, this court system, this like legal system, is meant to be. The rules are meant to be able to be bent into whatever shape is going to allow the system to fuck you over if you're just inconvenient to it. The actual law doesn't really matter. It's really down to the decision of judges, like individual judges who are politically motivated and often not very good people. And the complete antidote to any of that stuff is sovereign decision. It's that Thai king. It's the Khan. It's, the Egyptian pharaoh. It's the man with ultimate authority where it's clear who is in charge and where the buck stops. That is the one thing that liberalism says you are not allowed to have. You are not allowed to have this authority where nothing goes beyond it, kind of thing. And this is what they fear the most. This is what they call the tyrant. And ultimately, this is basically the absolute king. And this is the thing that could really actually set things to rights. It's like, liberals fear a lot of things, right? Like they fear omni-consumer products or, whatever. They fear Reaganomics or whatever.
Do they really, though?
Well, I mean, they sort of at a gut level, they're just like, we don't want private authority to be in charge or whatever. But in some ways, kind of incoherently, because
they want NGOs to do it.
They're happy for Google to enforce speech laws and things like that. So they're a little bit incoherent about the way that they go about it. But they don't like that in some ways. You're not allowed to be identitarian, right? Like that's something that's frowned upon today. Well, except for some people. Some people are allowed to be identitarian, and some people are not, right? They're afraid of Catholicism because it's whatever. It's just this like ancient institution that's like oppressive and everything like that. But they kind of like the Pope. So they like some of these things, but they don't like other parts of it or whatever. But the one thing that you are never allowed to have is absolute authority, right? The man where the buck stops with his decision. That is the one thing that they fear. And, that's why people love that Thai king or whatever, because it's clear that he basically is that. And in some ways, some of our like Slavic friends in that part of the world, without naming names, they have leaders that kind of answer to this description. And that's why those leaders are vilified, is because basically what they represent is the antidote to this like liberal dystopian system where the law, it's anarcho-tyranny, basically, where the law can be hammered into whatever shape is going to allow the system to like fuck over its enemies. And that is ultimately the solution to that problem. And that's the one thing that it is completely allergic to. Trump himself was a shadow of this kind of authority, this personal authority where he can snap his fingers and have people basically do things for him. That's the kind of thing that liberalism is afraid of. What it wants is it does not want to have somebody who commands that kind of personal loyalty. What it wants is it wants to have these sinecures and for people to be loyal to the system, to be loyal to their to liberalism itself, to be loyal to ideology rather than to be loyal to a particular man. That's the one thing that it fears the most. So, I don't know how this ties into RoboCop, but we got off on this tangent. But it's absolutely true. It's I could see that with what you're talking about with that king.
So I went on. You were talking about reading reviews. I went on to some Reddit threads talking about RoboCop. and you wouldn't believe how many like leftoids hate the movie and say
Really?
that it's fascist, like over and over again.
Is it just like hating cops, or is there something deeper to it?
Well, it's all like hating cops. It's saying that, talking about police, like how it lionizes police officers. They use this word a lot, lionize, right? It lionizes fascism.
It's because they hate lions, the foxes and the lions. They hate the lion archetype. Strong man.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, you're absolutely right. They hate the lion. And to a lot of these people, the lion, RoboCop is the lion. You know what I mean? He's like, he's Judge Dredd. To them, he is fascism. He is fascism manifested. And he's really not. He's not. He's a man machine that obeys orders and has directives, and he's just following the law, et cetera, et cetera. But the idea that a man is going around just like blowing criminals away, for some reason, the leftoids, they like hate people and love criminals.
Yeah.
It's absolutely.
They love criminality, right?
They love criminality and they want to protect criminals, and RoboCop's against that. And then the ones, I found this really fascinating, the ones that like were like I guess a little bit older and like grew up watching RoboCop and were just trying to justify why they like it. We're trying to show how it's transcoded and all this kind of stuff. And it made no sense that RoboCop himself was transcoded because he like became something else or something. It was like, it didn't really make sense. It's a lot of these people that make these arguments. It's really hard to follow their logic because it's so fucking deranged. And they write these,
but he's like miserable because of it. Like, I don't know. It doesn't make any sense, does it?
Well, it's like he goes under the knife, like kill. So what their thing is that they believe that RoboCop is transcoded because he goes under the knife and he becomes this thing that's not accepted by society. And Alex Murphy is his dead name. And he has this struggle of trying to figure out who his identity is. Is he this
Which
new?
he calls himself by, right?
Yeah. It's like, it's really, really reaching, really, really reaching. But it's total cope. It's total cope. These people are just like looking for a reason why they're not like, why they're allowed to like it. Right. Because they're really not allowed to like this. Like full, I'm not even just talking about basic bitch libs. I'm talking about full leftoids who the libs will bend a knee and cuck to if they're in certain spaces.
I love this, man. I love the way that the liberal hates the past. Like, I've talked about this before, how the past is the one thing that he can't change, and anything that he can't change, he's allergic to. So the past is the one thing that is like the least able to be changed. So he hates it and he wants to reject it. And yet he wants to project himself back into the deep past and say, well, we was primitive communists back when we were cavemen, and we had the social contract, back in the day, and that this is how societies were formed. And, we was like, whatever, like black, trans, left-handed dwarf knights riding on horseback through the Middle Ages. And it's like, he wants to put himself in every part of history, but he's, hates history and hates the past. And it's like, it's this totally incoherent thing. And it's just like, it's sad, and it's also laughable, and it's also kind of despicable all at the same time. I don't know. I find it hilarious how, like, the liberals like, fuck the past, this is a new world and we've overcome, the dark ages or whatever. But also we were always there in the dark ages, and we're really, we're really the sort of like, foundation of like modern society and everything. It's like, make up your mind, guy. Like, what the fuck?
They can't, they literally can't make up their mind. It's like, you look at RoboCop. RoboCop is literally a liberal that can't make up his mind. Not RoboCop himself, but the movie. The director is a liberal that can't make up his mind. It's like, who's the bad guy here, bro? Who's the bad guy? Is it your weasel mayor? Is it the corpos? Is it the police department? Is it the criminals? Who is it? Who's the bad guy? You've done a terrible job of portraying your ideas and demonstrating them. And in fact, you kind of like, I don't know. It's just like they can't make up their mind. And you're absolutely right. I know this, and I still fall back because I guess I am a logical person. You know what I mean? At least I think a lot of my worldview makes sense. It makes sense. It's coherent. It's, this is true here. This is true here. This is true here. And it all kind of coincides and justifies each. They literally, and they won't admit this. There's a reason that they love Google, right? They love Google censoring people and YouTube censoring people, but they hate Elon Musk, right? Oh, it's a private company. You can do whatever you want. They'll take libertarian, capitalist fucking arguments just whenever it serves them, and then they'll go the other way and say, "Oh, Elon Musk shouldn't be allowed to do this. This is democracy is dying. Democracy is failing." And it's like, which one is it, dude? Which one is it? Well, we hate cops and the justice system needs reformed, and blah, blah, except when it arrests our enemies, except when Donald Trump is getting arrested. Then that's righteous. It's like, dude, which one is it? It's not about which one is it. It's about they are coherent and they are actually whatever. It's that which serves liberalism, that which serves the ideology of liberalism. And that's what we have to remember, is that they will take whatever position and justify it and lie and gaslight. They gaslight constantly. When you like show them to their face something that is like a contradiction or something that is just bad, they'll be like, "Oh, show me the evidence for that. That's not happening. That's not real. That's not happening. That's not happening." And then you show that it's happening and you're like, "Oh, well, that's a good thing. It's not happening though." It's like fucking, they're just liars. You can't trust them. Nothing that comes out of their mouths is going to be truth. And I know we beat up on the idea of truth a lot. We beat up on the idea of rationalism, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. I guess we're not the coherent. Maybe they're more coherent than we are. Who knows? But they're dead.
Well, the thing is, I think we are more coherent because at the end of the day, our ideology is personal loyalty to a particular folk. It's loyalty to our families, and at a level of remove, of loyalty to our communities, and at another level of remove, loyalty to our country, and so on and so forth, right? It's like these concentric circles of loyalty that are based on basically attaching your loyalty to people in particular, whereas the liberal himself is attached more to an ideology. But the fact is that he still, in order to believe in this like propositional identity that like makes him what he is fundamentally, and it gives him a sense of worth because he's a weasel and nobody listens to him, and he got shoved in a locker when he was in high school, and he doesn't take himself seriously. He has to, in order to like create this sense of self-worth for himself, he has to attach to himself this propositional identity that says, this is what makes you a good person. But the only way he can do that fundamentally, because the ideology itself is incoherent, is just to sort of, completely gerrymander his loyalties to where he doesn't actually believe in anything, where he's happy for Trump to get arrested, with the law to be applied rigorously, but then, the criminal hood rat not to get arrested because he is, fundamentally, he's just basically, his loyalty ultimately is to identifying with the loser. And what this is fundamentally is his personal loyalty. So his ideology is in a distorted way, in a very incoherent way, ultimately comes back to this same personal loyalty. This is why ideology is kind of stupid at the end of the day, is that they are always post hoc justifications for personal loyalty. It's just that we are more honest about it and upfront about it. Whereas they have to go through it's that meme of the gymnast jumping across the mat versus going through all these like crazy rigmarole to get to like the same point. We just get there directly because we admit it. They get there very, very indirectly because they try to hide it from themselves. That ultimately they just identify with the loser, and this is a kind of personal loyalty. Whereas we're just like, no, we're loyal to our families, and that's the end, beginning, middle of end of it. So, Yeah, I don't know. It's ridiculous, and it's kind of gross and disgusting at the same time.
Yeah. You know, we're going to wrap it up here soon because we're on 2 hours. But I remember there was something that like was in my memory. And this was like before I was like really starting to get political. It was like when I was first starting to understand things. I was a libertarian. I'm starting to understand things. You know, I'm first coming into it. And I can't remember what happened, but there was a current thing. It was back when everybody was on Facebook, right? So like the shift from MySpace to Facebook was like not that far away. So everybody's on Facebook, and whatever the current thing that happened, it might have been no, it wasn't the Pulse Club. Like something, there was something that happened with gays. It might have been Obama. Remember when Obama shined the homo flag on the White House? And,
I don't remember that, but
yeah. Well, there was like this big deal. Like he signed into law that I guess gays could get officially married or something.
Oh,
and
yeah, I do remember that.
Shined the. Which how about some of that coming out that what's his balls? What was the guy, the man with the golden mic that all the boomers listened to? Was Rush Limbaugh? His accusations about Obama being a fanook turned out to be right. I don't know if you saw that, but yeah, it turns out that. Like a bunch of homos from the Chicago queer scene came out and like admitted that they've been like having like, you know, relations with Obama for years.
I mean, I'm not surprised, but like,
yeah,
wow.
This fucking like total fruitcake gets up on there. He's like, yeah, I sucked him off. It was like, yeah, we did cocaine and we were gay together. It's like totally, it was like nuts. So anyway, going back to the thing, fucking this whole thing. Remember, yeah, I know you know. Dr. Dutton is talking about this thing where virtue signaling is 100% evidence that that's a bad person. This is somebody that has the dark triad personality traits. This person has is missing 3 of the big five personality traits, et cetera, all this kind of shit. Right? He's like, this is evidence for this. If somebody is a virtue signaler, this is showing that. And I remember clear as day on Facebook when Obama was like 08, or 09 or something like that. There's this big gay thing, right? And Facebook put out these profile filters with the homo flag. Yeah. And I remember a bunch of dudes, like this was back when I was on Facebook and the only people on my Facebook were people that were from my hometown, right? So I'm on Facebook, all these people from my hometown, and I see a bunch of, these rainbow flags go up on people's shit. And I'm like, this is before all the and homo stuff really, really kicked off. And I'm thinking oh my God, what are these people doing? This is something, because 5 years before that, you would have never put that up there. You know what I mean? That would have been people would be like, yo, you're a fuck, you get out of here. You know what I mean? It would have been cool at all. But they started putting it up. These people from my hometown, and this one dude that I went to school with, he's kind of just like a fucking loudmouth, just like a loudmouth jerk off fucking Pennsylvania retard, right? But I kind of like him. He's an all right guy. You meet him, he's just one of those guys that once you get used to him, you get to know him, you start to like him. But everybody hates him when they first meet him because he's such a fucking big mouth and a dick. But this one girl writes this big ass fucking posts about homophobes and all this kind of shit, pro gay, and it's about time, and we as a society need to XYZ, and she's got the homo flag. And then he reposts this and he says, yo, you remember when you cheated on your boyfriend with the fucking that jerk off at work and then you got fired for stealing? Why is it that everybody that has a rainbow flag is a scumbag in real life? He calls them all. He calls them all out. Yeah. And everybody from the hometown starts screen capping. Everybody has got the rainbow flags, and they're just talking yo, this person's a fucking piece of shit. This guy's a pillhead. This girl's a fucking whore. These people are all universally pieces of shit. And I remember thinking that. I'm like, why is that? Why is it every single scumbag couldn't wait to jump on the homo thing so they could pretend to be good people? Now I understand. The virtue signaling is literally just it's just a Machiavellian way for piece of shit people to like get status and like power and influence and like hide the fact that they're pieces of shit.
Well, who's to say there's no such thing as progress, bro? Think of how far we've come since then. Normal people like you and I can understand these things. Whereas in 2009, it was like, what, I don't know, fucking Sam Francis or something like that. And Jared Taylor and like a handful of people that like nobody had ever heard of were the only people that kind of understood these things. So, you know, we're getting there. We're getting there, man. It's you know, the future's looking bright. These people are having trouble hiding under their little rock, and that's a good thing. And I look forward to seeing them scurry into more, you know, dark cracks underneath the sofa in the future.
Yeah, and maybe one day we'll get a RoboCop, and he'll go bring all these
dispense
people
justice.
Yeah.
That's
free citizen. You are under arrest for being a huge.
The future looks bright.
The future is beautiful. The now is beautiful too. Everything's beautiful. I can't wait. I'm pumped. So let's wrap it up. We are over 2 hours talking RoboCop. You guys out there, dude, I mean, all like one or two of you that have not seen RoboCop, and you're probably a Zoomer, need to go watch RoboCop. It is such a dope, awesome. We did some critique here. We dug into it a little bit and all this kind of stuff. Do not let that deter you from watching the film. It is just one of the great films.
It's a roller coaster ride. You'll have fun. It's awesome.
It's so much fun. There's people that get just like blasted to shit. There's a guy that runs a van into a vat of toxic waste and like has his skin melting and then gets hit by a car and explodes into slime. There's a fucking guy that gets like blasted by a Gatling gun and fucking dude gets hucked out of the top window of a thing. It's just like blood and guts and gore and sexy 80s. Like, dude, the women in this thing, oh my God, on these like fake commercials that they got, dude, if you want to see 80s babes, dude, this has 80s babes aplenty. Cornucopia of 80s babes. Just all over the place with this.
Why were they so much hotter back then? I don't know.
Dude, they're just built different, dude. They're just built different. And I'll tell you what. I don't want to get too far, and I don't want to beat anybody up or whatever. But you know, I look at a lot of the women, like, you know, the girls that are walking around now, like of this generation. I don't, you know, I'm not saying they're all a bunch of Uggs and it's all fucking over or whatever. But I do remember girls in our time being a lot prettier, right? I do remember girls being a lot prettier. And I think that the girls from our generation and the generation before that are now like women and moms still look better than a lot of the young girls, right? I think, you know, it's, you know, my wife is 37 and, you know, my wife is a beautiful woman, but she shouldn't be like flexing on 20 somethings. You know what I mean? I don't know. You know, it's they're just a better breed, I guess. I don't know. We were blessed to grow up in a time with beautiful women and awesome movies like RoboCop. And dude, and also the 80s babes, just the way they were natural. This was before they started getting butt implants and all these. There was definitely fake tits around, but not nearly as much. They were thinner. They were more feminine. And I remember, you know, I was seeing that whenever there's like a scene and like there's a bunch of like scared women running and they got the, like kind of the baggy late 80s, 90s clothes. Remember that shit? And I just remember like looking how they run. Like how they run is very dainty and everything like that. And I'm like, do these look like women? And also they had the big curly hair. Dude, I just thought the big curly hair looked beautiful. The way they did their makeup was different. It wasn't as fucking monstrous, right? It was much more minimal. They were just, I don't know. They were more natural looking. They were thinner. They were, this was before the Kim Kardashian turned everybody into a plastic surgery monster with cakes of, you know, makeup caked on like a circus clown.
That's hideous.
Yeah, I fucking hate it, dude. Bring back the 80s babes, dude. The 80s babes were prime. Go watch, if you want to see, dude, I know it's a meme. Go watch like young Pam Anderson and that other lady in the old Baywatch show. Dude, there aren't even like women in Hollywood now that fuck with that. Like, you just fuck it. Who was some of the other babes? You had, what was her name? Cindy Crawford. You had Jennifer Connelly. You had, dude, these were
just go on Academic Agent's timeline and look for his what's that contest he runs, whatever it is.
Oh, who would you do or whatever?
Who would you do?
Yeah,
he's got them all there. He's got them all there.
Dave's answer for that contest is fucking all of them.
Yeah.
The women from that era were just beautiful. They were beautiful. I'm not saying there aren't beautiful women now. I'm not saying that like you're all a bunch of Uggs if you're a Zoomer girl and you're listening right now, which we probably have, maybe like 0.003% of Zoomer women listening to Culture Dads.
And after this, it'll be 0.
Yeah, they rage quit. Yeah, turns out one of them is a God Emperor patron.
It's Marvin. No.
Yeah. So but anyway, 80s babes, fucking the practical effects, the color palettes, the film scores, legendary.
We didn't get a chance to talk about that. It's we can't go there now, but it's amazing. I actually sat there for a good hour while I was kind of like getting my thoughts together, but just before we started, and I listened to the whole soundtrack. It's fucking awesome. This guy's a master.
Yeah,
Basil Posadoris or something, whatever it is.
Yep, Basil Posadoris. Yeah, he did Conan the Barbarian, which is like one of the best film scores ever made. Fantastic. Brilliant composer. So yeah, everything about it's got the effects guy from The Thing. It's got Basil Posadoris from Conan. It's got fucking all kinds of great shit in it, man. It's the same people made this movie, made Starship Troopers, and I believe Total Recall. So, go watch it if you haven't. And if you haven't seen it in a long time, go back and rewatch it, because now with a fresh set of eyes, knowing what you know now, you might interpret some things and see some things that kind of like, hit you a different kind of way. At the very least, you're just going to have fun watching it. It is such it's despite being a dystopian movie, it is a white pill because it's just a beautiful work of film. And I think that it's just immortal and great, and people are going to be loving RoboCop forever. I hope so anyways. So that's going to be it. Mr. Mike, you have anything to say in closing?
No, anybody signed up, let us know what hardcovers you want. We've got one for the new Napoleon book, and that is a nice piece of work. It looks pretty fucking sweet. So hit us up, and thank you all for having signed up and keeping the lights on for us as we, fulfill our destiny. And thank you to everybody who's listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Hails and blessings to all the culture dads out there. Go get signed up if you're not signed up already, and check out what I'm doing over at the Bizarre Archives. You know where to find me. So just hails and blessings to all you guys, and I'll see you guys next time here on Culture Dads, Age of Sword and Cassette.